How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with The Movie Castle, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Raising Cain. This is a 3-issue miniseries put out by Wildstorm Comics and is the very last thing collected in the Book Two trade paperback. And boy, this is Wildstorm going out on Chainsaw with a really weird final story, and yeah, I'm not 100% sure what's up with this. Basically, the idea here is that we get Henrietta, the short-haired girl from the movies, giving birth to twins, Cain and Abel, and shortly after they're born, Cain's washed away in a flash flood, but he lives and is raised by a regular family. Abel, on the other hand, stays with the Hewitts and learns all about killing and cannibalism. Well, all would be okay for Cain, except for he's constantly plagued by visions of Abel, and he doesn't know that Abel isn't himself because they look exactly alike, and he asks himself, why do I see visions of myself doing horrible things? The plot goes on for quite some years. We actually get to see both boys grow up, and we get interesting parallel shots between the two of them, and you know that eventually they're going to once again run into each other, and you're wondering how that's gonna happen. I mean, that's a good idea, the idea of what happens if you transplant a Chainsaw family member into the real world. How strong is the family ties? I mean, there's some ideas in this comic, but overall, it doesn't play out the best. There are several points in the middle where the pacing kind of drags, sadly. You know, several points where it's like, okay, I get this scene. We could have cut it down by a few pages and come up with another interesting life event if it's going to be a life story. And there's also things like the opening of this has a needlessly elaborate drawbridge booby trap thing the Hewitts come up with, which is weird and cartoony and feels out of place. But yeah, it drags, and then when you get to the end, when they finally meet each other again, it feels like it rushes through it. I'm like, what's up with the pacing of this story? Also, on top of that, yeah, I did say this was a psychic link story. Super weird for Chainsaw to have a blatantly supernatural element in it. Not crazy about that, but the whole story is kind of cartoony, and that's pretty weird, you know, like not only the art style is cartoony. It's not bad art, but it doesn't feel like it belongs in a Chainsaw book, although we did get some fun, gory little moments with it, but it's also written to be cartoony too, and I feel like you have to be very careful when you write for the Chainsaw family, because when they're done right, they're creepy and over the top and great horror characters, but they can so easily become caricatures and parodies of themselves, and this easily crosses that line into caricature territory. There are several moments that are designed to be gross out moments, and all the characters talk with thick, over-the-top, cartoonish southern accents. Yeah, this felt like they were trying to be silly, and I wasn't a huge fan of that. And also because of following a character that's disconnected from the family, and also you don't give Leatherface a ton of screen time anyway. I wish he was in this book more, especially because this is the story that we go out on with Wildstorm. Yeah, it's not my favorite. It's a weird little story that gets 3 issues, and I'd much rather really any of the other stories have gotten that and this been a one-shot instead. I mean, how cool would 2 more issues of About a Boy have been? But whatever, it's fine for what it is. It's probably my least favorite out of all the Wildstorm stuff. But anyway, if you do want to see more, let's switch to the close-up camera. I'll show you guys a little bit of the story and the art. I'll try to avoid doing too many spoilers, so I'll be avoiding the end bits. But without further ado, if you guys want to see more, let's switch to the close-up camera. Alright, here we are inside the castle, taking a closer look at the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Raising Cain. Once again, we're inside Book 2, so let's take this closer to the camera. On the credits page, we can see that this is the last story collected here, Raising Cain number 1 through 3, written by Bruce Jones with art by Chris Gugliotti. And if we flip pretty far into the book, we can get to the story proper. Now, I'm not going to do any major spoilers. I do want to break down and analyze a few scenes and say my piece on a few plot points, but I'll try to be avoiding the end bits. But anyway, let's dive in. we open up with this couple, and the woman is mad at this guy for eating the gingerbread men too early. They're supposed to be for a party, and then they have to go across this shaky and unstable bridge, but they of course go into the water and almost drown. The woman gets away, the guy meets someone very strange in the water, and she eventually sees that this whole bridge thing was some weird elaborate booby trap, and the man is getting eaten in a way similar to the gingerbread man. Look, they took off his head. The woman, however, will run into Leatherface, and both of them are down, and there's the title card. Well, it turns out these family members didn't want just food for any old occasion. Henrietta is giving birth, and they wanted to give her something special. And now we get into those gross out moments I hinted at earlier, trying to shove the fingers down her throat for nourishment. And hey, I want the afterbirth, and they're fighting over it while Luda May is swearing up a storm. Well, it turns out Henrietta gave birth to twins, and Luda May doesn't want to raise kids she can't tell apart, so she carved a C and an A into their arms for Cain and Abel, and she has like a controlling nature over these babies. She's kind of the head of the whole family, and Henrietta just wants to see her babies. Well, cut to 6 weeks later, and Henrietta is not doing so good. There's a flashback to talk about who the father of these babies are, and it turns out he was her brother. He was shot in the face by a kid with a BB gun and wandered into the campfire. And yeah, if you guys have read the past Wildstorm comics, you know that Americarnivore gives a pretty good explanation as to why Henrietta could be pregnant, but no, let's backtrack on that. Give us this goofy scene where a character runs into a fire, and, throw in that it's her brother because, incest and chainsaw family, am I right? Anyway, Henrietta is sick of all this, and she thinks maybe it would be better if I didn't raise my kids in a cannibalistic family. She tries to sneak out, but of course gets found out. Her family chases her as she tries to get away, and she's knocked away in one of those flash floods, which I've lived in Texas my whole life. I've never encountered a flash flood, but the state's big. Maybe this does happen somewhere, but I don't know. It feels like a blatant plot device. Now, Abel gets handed back to Luda May, but Henrietta and Cain are washed downstream and presumed dead by the family members. However, Henrietta is not quite dead, and with her last words tells the baby's name to this group of kids who are thrilled to have a new baby brother. We then cut to years and years later, and we get to see that Cain is being driven to a therapist by his foster parents, and when he talks to the therapist, he says, I see myself in a different location. And that's where we get this back and forth, this green and red, him with his foster father versus Abel with the chainsaw family. And Cain is hunting a deer, but Abel is hunting a person. And Cain's disturbed by this and doesn't know what these visions of a kid who he thinks is himself doing horrible, horrible things. What does that even mean? And we get to see like the two father figures in each boy's life, and we get to see the parallels. I don't want to go terribly much farther in the story than that, but I will say we do go all the way till the kids are grown up, all the way into the year 2007, which is pretty far for the Chainsaw series. And we get Cain, and he's going to be on a collision course with his brother, because they're going to eventually reunite. And from there on, it does get a lot more interesting, and I just kind of wish that the book spent more time on the eventual reunion, because the life story is good enough, but it should have had more complexities to it. I don't know, it's just like 2 or 3 big moments that we really get pretty easily, and it doesn't really warrant the page count. And then when we get to that last little bit when they finally meet, it's over way too quickly, and I wish the pacing was better because it doesn't seem to get what the cool moments are, and it just seems to waste time on stuff we either already understand or stuff that I don't care about, like this weird elaborate drawbridge thing. Yeah, yeah, I don't know. It's not terrible, but it's definitely my least favorite of the stories that Wildstorm did, and I totally wish that something different like About a Boy should have gotten 3 issues. That was a cool series, and I could totally go for more of Leatherface's origin. As it stands, okay, not the best thing ever, a weird cartoony take on the Chainsaw family. I mean, it is what it is, but whatever. Anyway, to everyone who's watched so far, thank you for watching. To everyone who's liked and subscribed, thank you. You really are helping the channel out. I'll leave a relevant playlist on the bottom. If you guys want to see me review the other comics from this series, you should be able to find them here. Anyway, have a good day. I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Relevant playlist here. Have a good day now.